Sonny had no choice but to resort to one last desperate gamble. He knew that he'd never best Gregor in a physical confrontation, at least not without an advantage. Bloodbane poison was supposed to be his hidden card, but it turned out to be nearly useless. Being able to see in the dark did not help that much either. Somehow, Gregor was able to perceive their surroundings without any light. Whether he was using his sense of hearing or some magical ability, Sonny did not know. Not that it mattered, now that they had left the cave and were standing under the moonlit sky. Now Sonny had only one advantage left. Unlike Gregor, he knew that the tyrant was blind. Acting on that knowledge, however, was easier said than done. That's why he tried to stay quiet and rang the silver bell. If the description did not lie, its ringing could be heard from miles away. Surely, the tyrant was going to hear it too. Now Sonny only had to stay silent, stall for time, and hope that the monster would come and hear the young soldier. Sonny's lack of response sent Gregor into a fit of bewilderment and anger. Gregor stepped closer to Sonny. "Tell me right now, or you will regret it." His voice was quite threatening, but still, the young slave did not answer. He just shivered in the cold and tried not to groan, despite the pulsing pain in his chest. Rage flashed in the soldier's eye. "Why are you not answering?" But Sonny did not dare to answer. He held his breath and watched, horrified, as the familiar colossal figure appeared behind Gregor. His lungs were on fire, and his heart was beating like crazy. It was beating so loud that he was afraid the blind tyrant would hear it. But of course, it couldn't be louder than Gregor's voice, who was still only talking, turning himself into the only source of noise on this mountain. At the last second, a hint of understanding appeared in the young soldier's eyes. He began to turn around, his sword rising with lightning speed. But it was too late. A massive hand appeared from the darkness and caught him in an iron grip. The bone claws scraped against the armor, pulling it apart. Mountain King dragged Hero back, paying little attention to the sword biting into its wrist. Viscous saliva was streaming from its open maw. Petrified by fear, Sonny slowly turned his back to them and took a couple of steps up the old winding path. Then he darted away, running as fast as he could. Behind him, a desperate scream tore apart the silent night. Then, a hungry roar followed. It seemed that Gregor wasn't going down without a fight, even though his fate was already sealed. But Sonny didn't care. He was running away, climbing higher and higher. "I'm sorry, Gregor," he thought. "I did say that I will watch you die. But as you know, I am a liar. So go on and die on your own." Sonny looked at the tableau ahead of him. A lonesome, dark mountain stood tall against the raging winds. Jagged and proud, it dwarfed other peaks of the mountain chain, cutting the night sky with its sharp edges. A radiant moon bathed its slope in the ghostly light. Under that light, the young man with pale skin and black hair reached the peak of the mountain. However, his looks didn't match the magnificence of the scene. Wounded and staggering, he looked pathetic and weak. Sonny looked like a walking corpse. His coarse tunic and cloak were torn and smeared with blood. His sunken eyes were cloudy and lifeless. His body was bruised, beaten, and cut. There were specks of bloody foam on his lips. He was hunched over, cradling the left side of his chest. Each step caused him to moan, ragged breath barely escaping through his gritted teeth. Sonny was hurting all over, but most of all, he was cold. So cold. He just wanted to lie down in the snow and fall asleep, but doing so would be certain death. If the temperature didn't kill him, the tyrant would. He used this time to put as much time between himself and that thing as possible. Sonny continued walking, hoping that the nightmare might end if he reaches the peak. Step, step, another step. Finally, he had made it. At the highest point of the mountain, a vast expanse of flat rock was covered with snow. In the center of it, illuminated by moonlight, stood a magnificent temple. Its colossal columns and walls were cut from black marble, with exquisite reliefs decorating the Stygian pediment and broad frieze. Beautiful and awesome, it looked like a palace of a dark god. At least it did once. Now, the temple was in ruins. Fractures and cracks marred the black stones, and parts of the roof had collapsed, letting in ice and snow. Its tall gates were broken, as if smashed into pieces by the hand of a giant. Still, Sonny was satisfied. "Found you." His voice was hoarse. Gathering the last of his strength, the young slave slowly limped in the direction of the ruined temple. His thoughts were muddled and confused. "See this, Gregor?" he thought, forgetting for a second that the soldier was already dead. "I've made it. You were strong and ruthless, and I was weak and timid. Yet now you are a corpse, and I am still alive. Isn't it funny?" He stumbled and groaned, feeling the edges of his broken ribs cutting deeper into his lungs. Blood was dripping from his mouth. Dead or not, Gregor had gotten him good with that single strike. A laugh escaped Sonny's lips. "The outcome was predictable. What did any of them know about being ruthless? Poor fools. In my world, people had thousands of years to turn cruelty into art. And as someone on the receiving end of all that cruelty, don't you think I would know more about being vicious than anyone ever could?" He was getting closer to the temple. Truth be told, they never stood a chance. Wait, what was I thinking about? A moment later, he had already forgotten. There was only pain, the dark temple, and the overpowering desire to sleep. Don't fall for it. It's just hypothermia. If you fall asleep, you'll die. Finally, Sonny reached the steps of the Black Temple. He started to climb them, not noticing thousands of bones that were scattered around. These bones once belonged to humans and monsters. All of them were killed by the invisible guardians still lingering around the temple. As Sonny was climbing the steps, one of the shapeless guardians approached him. It was ready to snuff out the spark of life that was burning weakly in the defiler's chest, but then stopped, sensing a faint, strangely familiar scent coming from his soul. The scent of divinity. Sorrowful and lonesome, the guardian moved aside, letting Sonny pass. Oblivious, he entered the temple. Sonny found himself in a grandiose hall. Moonlight cascaded through the holes in the partially collapsed roof. Deep shadows surrounded these circles of silver light, not daring to touch them. The floor was covered in snow and ice. At the far end of the hall, a large altar was cut from a single piece of black marble. It was the only thing inside the temple untouched by snow. Forgetting why he came here, Sonny headed for the altar. He just wanted sleep. The altar was dry, clean, and as wide as a bed. Sonny climbed on it and lay down. It seemed like he was going to die. He was okay with it. Sonny tried to close his eyes, but was stopped by a sudden noise coming from the direction of the temple's entrance. He turned his head to look, not even a little bit curious. What he saw would have sent chills running down his spine, if he wasn't so cold, tired, and indifferent. Mountain King was standing there, looking at him with its 5 blind eyes. He was still massive, terrifying, and revolting. Worm-like shapes were still moving frantically under its skin. It was sniffing the air, salivating. Then it opened its maw and moved forward, slowly approaching the altar. Sonny suddenly clutched his chest, convulsing in a fit of torturous coughing. His final thought was simply, "What an ugly—" Bloody foam flew from Sonny's mouth and fell on the altar. However, the black marble instantly absorbed it, returning to its pristine state. The tyrant was just about to reach Sonny. It was already stretching its hands to grab him. Sonny didn't fight or flee. He'd gone as far as he could. He thought, "I guess this is the end." But at that last second, suddenly, the voice of the spell resonated in the dark temple.
"You have offered yourself as a sacrifice to the gods. The gods are dead and cannot hear you. Your soul bears the mark of divinity. You are a temple slave. Shadow God stirs in his eternal slumber. He sends a blessing from beyond the grave. Child of shadows, receive your blessing."
Under Sonny's astonished eyes, the shadows crowding the great hall suddenly moved, as though coming alive. Tentacles of darkness surged forward, entangling the Mountain King's arms and legs. The mighty tyrant struggled, trying to get free. But how could it resist the power of a god? The shadows dragged Mountain King back, pulling it in different directions. The tyrant opened its maw, and a furious howl escaped it. The next second, its body ruptured, torn apart into pieces. Blood, viscera, and severed limbs fell on the floor in a crimson torrent. Just like that, the horrible creature was dead. Sonny blinked. Once again, he was alone in the ruined temple. The great hall was dark and silent. And then the spell whispered, "You have slain an awakened tyrant, Mountain King. Wake up, Sunless. Your nightmare is over. Prepare for appraisal." Sonny's first reaction wasn't relief, but disbelief. He had survived. He had made it through the nightmare, even though he had to face a tyrant. He knew he should be happy, and in some ways he was. He hadn't wanted to die, even though he expected and accepted it. But surviving this way was bound to have complications. He just pledged himself to a god he knew nothing about. What was expected of him? And who was this powerful and dangerous shadow god? Sonny feared he'd find out soon.
Hey amazing viewers, it's Sonny here. Thanks for sticking with us. By the time of the release of this video, only 9% of our viewers have joined the party by subscribing, and 91% of you might miss out on our next mind-blowing video. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join the exclusive club.